homesteaders, gardeners, and cooks. My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Miles Away Farm. If you're new here, welcome to my kitchen. If you're not new here, welcome back. Today we are making a repeat of the very first video I ever shot with this little GoPro camera, and that is roasted garlic bombs. What this is you're roasting garlic in your toaster oven or in your oven with some olive oil wrapped in tin foil. There's probably other containers that you could use. And then you're squeezing out that luscious roasted garlic that is now sweet and sticky and much more mild than raw garlic is. You're gonna just mush that all together and then divvy it out in 1 tablespoon size chunks onto a cookie sheet and freezing it and then just stashing it in your freezer. If you grow garlic, there are lots of strategies for growing a variety that will store up to 9 months. General rule of thumb is hardneck varieties that have this hard center that grows up out of the middle and make a garlic scape or a flower head. Those are usually shorter season storage garlics, so they don't usually store very long term, but they are often way easier to peel, and so they're a really nice variety to have at the beginning of your garlic harvest season. And then the soft neck varieties that do not have a garlic scape, this is a variety of the soft neck, they tend to have tighter wrappers. They're a little harder to peel, but they store for much longer periods of time. And so what I have here is, this is mostly soft neck. There's a few hard necks that have just gotten stashed in here that were probably accidentally mixed together in terms of variety. This is, I don't know the variety of this right off the top of my head. I will put it on the screen. Here's an example of what happens if you leave this sit too long. The cloves start to dry and they start to sprout. And so this one is starting to sprout, definitely past its prime. And you don't want to have a bunch of dried out sprouted garlic sitting in your storage. You want to actually be able to use it year round. What I'm going to do, I have a lot of smaller heads in here. This is an example. This is going to be really fiddly to peel each individual garlic. That's one of the reasons I love this process, is you can just chop the top off the whole head, roast it, squeeze it out, and you don't have to fiddle around with a bunch of like little slivers of garlic that are kind of maddening. So I have a bunch of smaller heads in here, and I'm going to go through and roast these smaller heads of garlic to preserve them for the rest of the year. These are really great to throw into anything that basically calls for garlic, where you think that nice roasty flavor would be lovely. Beautiful in soups and stews, and they're milder, and so you can use, a little bit more garlic than you would fresh garlic. Really lovely in a pasta sauce. So I just keep a bag of these stashed in my freezer, and I really use them year round. But I especially use them this time of year. We are just coming into spring. Happy first day of spring. And so my garlic that's planted out won't be ready until late June. And so from March to June or July, so at least 4 months, I don't have a great source of really fresh garlic if you're trying to just grow your own and not just buy stuff from the store. And so this is an alternative to that. This is a great way to preserve it. You can also dry it, of course, and I do use a lot of dried garlic as well. But roasted garlic bombs, it's going to get you through that 4-month period when you don't have easy fresh garlic at hand. Let's get started. So because I have a little bit of dirt and the stems on the bottom of these, I am actually just going to cut off the top and the bottom of these before I roast them, because it's going to save me a lot of fiddly cleanup. And I'm using a serrated knife here because it's going to very easily cut through all of that root. And you can see these are starting to sprout. There's a bit of a myth around garlic that you should pick the green sprouts out because they impart a bitter flavor to things. And I can't remember if it was Ethan Jabowski or one of the other YouTubers that I follow, but somebody did a side-by-side comparison of that and really found no significant difference. This one is a hardneck, and you can see that little stem in there. That's the stem on the bottom. And that's not going to hurt anything to leave that in there, so I'm just going to leave it in there. I've had a lot of interns help me out over the years from the local colleges. And so while I started out with all of my garlic varieties separate and kept them very separate so that I knew exactly what I had so I could replant them each year, sometimes the interns were not as careful about that as I was. And there also are some varieties of garlic that will, under stressful conditions, send up a weak garlic scape, even though they're technically supposed to be a soft neck garlic. This is why I'm using this serrated knife. You can see, oh, got a little bit of moldy one in there. I'm just going to dispose of that, and we'll keep the rest. All right, so I'm going to get the rest of these cleaned up, and we'll get them roasting. I just wanted to show you guys this variety that was all mixed in. These were all supposed to be the same variety of garlic. This one is so clearly not the same. Notice the reddish color. I'll put the possible variety up on the screen in terms of what this is, but it's just really pretty and it's really dramatic and very easy to see that it is not the same thing. I usually just do this in a little envelope of tinfoil, but I have quite a bit here, and I think I can get away with putting this in here and then just putting a really tight tinfoil lid on it. So that's my current plan. Squeezing all of these out is going to take some time. That's going to be a little bit time consuming. I'm mostly trying to get off this outer peel that has a little bit of leftover dirt on it. And we're going to roast it for a good long time, so honestly, it's going to be sanitized by the time it's done. But, you know, if you have an opportunity to not put grit in your food, don't put grit in your food. Okay, so here's all of our garlic. This is an inexpensive brand of olive oil from Cost Plus World Market. I'm just going to put a good generous drizzle on there, and literally that's all I need to do. There's going to be a lot of moisture coming up through there. It's going to be fine. And then I'm going to make myself a very tight tinfoil cover, because these are roasting, but they're also steaming. And so I'm going to do what I can here to keep that moisture in. I'm looking up the America's Test Kitchen recipe. They recommend 400 degrees. So that's what I'm going to do. Honestly, I think almost anything would work here. And I'm just going to use my toaster oven, because that way I don't have to heat up the whole house. And I'm going to roast this for, I'm going to do 45 minutes, and then we'll see how tender it is. All right, this went for 45 minutes. My house smells gloriously of garlic. And the original Cook's Illustrated recipe that I was roughly looking at was an hour and a half. So we'll see how this looks. Yeah, see how done that is? Those don't need longer than that. We're definitely cooked. We just want them to be soft. I'm not looking for insanely caramelized or anything. So I think we're good. This is still quite hot, so I'm gonna let this cool, and then we'll get to squishing some cloves. All right, it's a couple hours later. Everything is nice and cool, and I am just gonna put this garlic into my food processor, and these will just squeeze right out of there. You can see how easily that comes out, especially because both ends are cut off, and so there's no vacuum in there. Things are just gonna come out super easy. It's like squeezing a tube of toothpaste, which is part of the beauty of this process. Is, you know, it's still fiddly, but it is not nearly as fiddly as it would have been if we had, you know, tried to peel every one of these cloves of garlic by hand. You ever watched Dr. Pimple Popper on YouTube? It's weirdly fascinating how mesmerizing that stuff can be. All right, probably way more information about me than you wanted to know. I'm gonna work my way through this and I'll bring you back when we've got it all in the food processor. So we got all of our garlic squeezed. There is a little bit of juice and oil in the bottom of this, and I'm just gonna add it to our bowl. The oil that's left over in this is gonna just get mixed in, and it will help actually preserve this garlic when it's frozen so that it doesn't get dried out. And so I love having that extra lovely garlic flavored oil in there. So here is our squished garlic, and here's all of our peels. All right, let's get this on the food processor. And I'm just gonna blend this up for, you know, a minute or so. I'm okay if there's a little bit of chunkiness in here. I'm not looking for it to be perfectly pureed because, you know, if I was throwing something into a soup, I don't mind if there's little bits of roasted garlic in there. And you can kind of see there's a lot of different colors. That is, some got more roasted than others. And I'm totally fine with that. Like, I like that variation of color and different levels of caramelization. It's just gonna add to the flavor. Beautiful. Look at that deliciousness. By the way, if you make homemade hummus, adding some of this to your homemade hummus, so roasted garlic instead of fresh garlic in hummus, chef's kiss. Very, very good. And by the way, you do not have to have a food processor in order to do this. You can just mash it up with a fork or a mortar and pestle if you wanted to do that, if you had one of those. The food processor makes quick work of it, but you definitely can do it with a fork, and I've done that before. And this is pretty smooth. You can see there's just a little bit of chunkiness there, but mostly smooth. This is called a disher, and you can pick these up. I'm sure you can get them at big box stores. I probably got this at a restaurant supply store. This is about a tablespoon. I use this. It's great for this. It's great for tomato paste, anything you want. I make small cookies with this. This is gonna be sticky, so it's gonna be a little bit tricky. But it's a very nice, quick sizing. Obviously, you don't have to have one of these. You could just, you know, use a couple of spoons and dish it out. But this works quite well and makes fast work of it, so. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this was the first video I shot with this camera. The footage was truly terrible. I did not know how to frame the action, and so it's almost unwatchable. And so hopefully I've learned a few things over the last almost 2 years, and much better end product. And you can make these as big or as small as you want. Sometimes I'll throw multiples in a recipe, and sometimes I just use one. So I try to kind of think what's my lowest common denominator in terms of size. Imagine this would be a little easier to work with if I had chilled it first, but it's still pretty functional here. And I'm getting a little variation in size, not that big of a deal. Actually kind of like that, because sometimes when I'm rooting around for one of these, I just want a little bit instead of a lot. This is parchment paper. It's just going to make it easier to get it off of the sheet once they're frozen. We got 35 1 tablespoon roasted garlic balls out of that. That'll last me a good long time. I'm going to go stash this in my freezer overnight, and I'll bring you back in the morning to show you bagging them up. Good morning, you guys. It is the next day, and these are frozen solid. We're just going to get them off of this cookie sheet. and into a bag. You guys ever seen one of these little handy dandy doodads? A friend of mine and I, you have to buy two, and we didn't really both need two, and so we bought one set and shared it, and we both just refer to it as the bag thingy. I'm not sure what the actual name is, but they're really handy for doing this kind of work. So we're just gonna get everything unstuck from the cookie sheet and the parchment. And these are gonna come off pretty easily because there's some olive oil in there, and because parchment doesn't stick, which is kind of the whole point of parchment. And you can just grind garlic fresh and do this same exact thing and have fresh frozen garlic. I know Becky at Acre Homestead does that. I generally prefer, if I'm gonna go to all this work, I want it to be an extra taste treat. And so I prefer to have mine roasted, but there's no reason you can't do this fresh. And I do a fresh garlic, fresh ginger nugget for use in all kinds of Asian dishes because they often call for fresh garlic and fresh ginger together. I freeze that in balls in the exact same way. So fresh also works if you want more of a fresh flavor and less of a roasted flavor. But this is a great way, either way, is a great way to preserve the garlic that you have on hand that is starting to sprout. Highly recommend it. Thanks for watching, Tribe. If you like this kind of content, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave me a comment, and share. I have new content coming out every week.